Alright, so for this deck, I basically just wanted to build a deck that allows me to use Rippling Mirror Force that isn't a Psy-frame deck. So I was like, what if I just put a whole bunch of cards in here that can banish themselves or return to my hand? So I've got like Sky Star Ray. Every time he inflicts damage, he gets banished until the next turn. Fly Fang, same thing, except he can't attack directly, so he's not as reliable as Sky Star Ray, but he does have the same effect. He does do piercing damage, so he is kind of useful too. And then there's Wind Up Rabbit and Thunderbird, who can both just banish themselves whenever. And then I have a Spirit Monster. I could have put in a couple more Spirit Monsters, but I really don't want to give up my my normal summon, which I didn't actually end up using as much as I thought I would, so I probably could have used a couple more Spirit Monsters since they do return to your hand at the end of the turn. And then a few Karibo monsters. Actually, I could have threw in King Kong Bio, the level 1 Spirit Monster, to bring these guys out to use more XYZ plays. But then again, having XYZ monsters kind of kills the theme of the deck. Whatever, I did go into him anyway. I wanted to use the new Clear Karibo. If he's in your graveyard, you can banish him to draw a card if your opponent attacks you directly. And this deck always has my side of the field wide open for direct attacks. So I got to use Clear Karibo's effect pretty much every time it was in my graveyard, which was pretty fun. Drawing a card is always a good thing. Plus, if the card you draw is a monster, you can special summon it. And then Rainbow Karibo is just another really good card for stopping attacks and stuff. Rippling Mirror Force is awesome. Mirror Force, it can only activate it if you control no monsters though. And it just sends all your opponent's monsters back into their deck, which is awesome. Storm Mirror Force, a lesser version, but can be used even if you have monsters on your side of the field, and just returns all your opponent's monsters back to their hand. A really good card, but Rippling Mirror Force's effect is better, but because the activation cost is kind of a pain in the ass, technically Storm Mirror Force is way better, but in this deck, where I never have any monsters, Rippling Mirror Force is better. And I also threw in Zero Force, since I am banishing a lot of the cards. Actually, how many cards? 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 of the cards I run, the 4 main cards, all have effects which banish themselves. So Zero Force is almost always in play if I have it. All it does is reduces the attack of all monsters on the field to 0. And it's a permanent reducer. So I can just throw out Wind Up Rabbit, banish him, and activate Zero Force. All my opponent's monsters. It also lowers my monsters too, so I have to be careful about that. To 0 permanently, which is fun. It wasn't really all that useful though, because my opponent would just go into XYZ summons and render that useless. So it was more useful like at the end of the turn if he used a Wind Up Rabbit or a Thunderbird. It wasn't as useful with Sky Star Ray or Fly Fang, who banish after the battle phase. And that's I had these guys out like pretty much every duel. Or I just didn't really think about using it with Wind Up Rabbit in this one duel that I ended up winning anyway. But yeah, Zero Force is nice too, and then I just had another Mirror Force. I could have threw in more Mirror Forces, but I think I was good enough with just Rippling, Storming, and Fire. I could have also just threw in regular Mirror Force and Burying Mirror Force. Burying Mirror Force would actually work pretty well in this deck too, since a lot of the damage I did was just attacking directly. And I have a Piercer, and these guys can usually attack over him, but it actually might have saved me now that I think about it, because I did kill myself with Fire Force a couple times.